In this video, we're going to be talking about what makes this brand new iPad 2024 so special, what does it mean for future consumer tech, and what it means for content creators such as myself, Colorist, and in post-production in general, and which specs should you get if you decide to buy the next iPad. We recently did a survey. Majority of you, regardless of the skill set, are struggling with shot matching, skin tones, balancing, and working with 8-bit footage. So I created a 1-hour long free training that covers all of that. Plus, we'll wrap up the training with an extensive Q&A, and you'll also get a link to download the practice footage, power grades, and some of my personal LUTs. Link to the training is in the description below. Let's get back to the video. So basically every single video that I'm watching, majority of the people are losing their shit about the M4 chip in the iPad Pro. That's great. I don't really care about it because at the end of the day, it's still running on iOS. So it's just a giant iPhone, right? So there are still limitations that it can't get beyond until they unlock it and turn it into a real macOS operation. Until that happens, my A12X chip in this 3rd generation iPad Pro is plenty fast. All right, so then let's move on to the most exciting news that almost made me break my $30,000 monitor, which is the brand new display technology that they're using in the iPad. And guys, this is true. World's most advanced display. So anyone who's ever seen an OLED TV or owned one knows that there's literally no better screen in the world. The biggest problem with OLED is that it doesn't get really bright, because if it gets too bright, you get burn-in. And with burn-in, you literally have to replace your screen. Other technologies, inferior technologies like LCD and mini LED can get 2, 3, 4 times brighter than OLED. So that used to be OLED's biggest Achilles heel until this technology right here. 3 words: tandem OLED technology. That is something that Samsung has been working on for a while. And this is the first product that they're implementing their technology in. So it's basically taking 2 OLED screens, sandwiching them together. So now you're getting double the brightness and double the reliability. And I gotta tell you, Samsung is on fire because 3 years ago, they came up with the technology QD OLED, which gives you basically 91% Rec 2020 coverage. Mind-blowing. That is way better than WOLED, which only gives you, I believe, 52 or 58%. Don't quote me on it. If anything, go watch some videos on AGTV. Vincent knows his But QD OLED was a huge leap when it comes to color gamut and giving you the most vibrant colors. And then now, by having the brightness to match that, OLED becomes the craziest technology. Now, the second most exciting thing that caught my eye when it comes to iPad Pro's display is this right here, reference mode. So they're basically saying that if you're going to be using color critical applications, you will have this mode. But I'm also thinking there might be just like you pull down from the top, like Command Center, and then turn on reference mode, which means that it will put your device into a filmmaker mode, but even more color accurate. I'm thinking like delta E of 2 or less, which is monumental on so many different levels, but I'm going to be covering that in just a little bit. And I'm telling you, 1000 nits full screen brightness for an OLED is such a crazy leap because this thing costs $30,000 for that one reason alone, that you get edge-to-edge 1000 nit brightness, which makes it a mastering monitor. So when you watch movies in Hollywood, 90% of them are graded using this exact monitor right here, BVM HX310. And this was one of its biggest strengths that now you're getting in a consumer device that you can just pick up and hold in your hand. As much as people like to hate on Apple, they keep coming out with revolutionary tech that everybody then starts following. But before you make the same mistake I made, breaking my $30,000 monitor, just take a second to do some thorough reading, and after which I realized it does not mention Rec 2020 anywhere. So our color gamut coverage is limited to P3. If it was covering Rec 2020, I know for a fact they would have mentioned it right here. I mean, I confirmed it with ChatGPT and Gemini too. There's not a single Apple device that covers Rec 2020 100%. So that is one thing that you have to keep in mind. So any of you out there like me sitting on a $15,000 or $30,000 monitor, do not put it on eBay just yet. That said, getting a device that you can hold in your hand by clicking one button, putting it in color accurate mode with delta E of 2 or less, that covers P3 color space, gives you full screen 1000 nits with 2 million to 1 contrast ratio. I mean, come on, what else do you want? Which leads us into our second point. What does it mean for future consumer tech? And what I'm looking at and predicting is that 2025, all the major brands, I'm talking about Sony, Samsung, and LG, or at least one or two of the three, will have tandem OLED technology in them. So that is exciting because this accelerated that process, because once this is out, now everybody gets their hands on this technology. They get to do more R&D and they just speed up the process. That is just one thing that happens all the time. Like QD OLED came out, Samsung introduced QD OLED, and the next thing you know, Sony jumped on it, and then Sony had better processing, so their QD OLEDs were better than Samsung's QD OLEDs, but then Samsung's QD OLEDs are better in some aspects than Sony's, and then they just keep going back and forth, and who wins? Pretty much everybody wins because we buy their products, but then also as consumers, we're winning because we're getting best of the best. So this gets me super excited because we're 1 year away from getting OLED panels that we cannot even imagine what they will look like, especially blown into a big screen like 77-inch that I have sitting right here. And secondly, I'm hoping and assuming, just like when the filmmaker mode was introduced and then it just kind of caught fire and it went from LG to Panasonic to Sony and to, actually it never went to Sony, I believe, but it went to Samsung. I'm assuming that with the reference mode, and I'm hoping that same thing happens where the reference mode goes into the consumer tech. I can put my LG C3 in a filmmaker mode, and when I look at it next to my $30,000 monitor that is professionally calibrated, they don't come close. I still have to go in there and make manual changes and just eyeball it until it's as close as possible. So what I'm looking at is give me a reference mode, or what Sony calls a professional mode, which their professional mode is derived from the BVM HX310. That's one of the strengths for Sony's. And I feel like this right here, the reference mode, could be the answer, could be the ace in the hole for all the other tech, all the other companies. So they have something that with one click, go in a reference mode on, let's just say, your C4, C5, whatever comes out in the future. Same thing with Sony, S90E or F or whatever. And we just go to reference mode and it's better than filmmaker mode. It is ready for mastering content. How cool would that be? So I'm hoping that that happens. I'm hoping that it latches on and goes into consumer tech, because that would be just such a next level thing. That is just a prediction that I have and a wish that I have. Now moving on to my third point, which is what does it mean for content creators or the film industry? Now, one of the problems that I encounter pretty much all the time as a colorist is that anytime I send in my color for a review, I get feedback that just makes no sense. And that's not because I'm getting defensive. That's because they're saying things like, hey, skin tones are looking magenta or they're looking green, and they're saying all these things. But the problem is, I have scopes. I have all the tools to make sure that nothing is wrong. Everything is correct. So then how can I tell them, hey, you guys are wrong because you're looking at it on an uncalibrated monitor? And that's probably why you think the skin tones are either magenta or green. But having this reference mode, let's just say if now your client has an iPad Pro 2024, and they put it in the reference mode, bingo. Like, they're seeing what I'm seeing right here. That changes everything. I feel like it becomes a requirement for every agency to load their creative directors up with the latest iPad Pros because it just takes out so much of the back and forth. And people that cannot afford the $30,000 monitor and are creating content, I will highly advise to do the same thing. Get the iPad Pro, put it in a reference mode. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's really difficult to grade on a 13-inch monitor, so I feel like that's not realistic. Let's just say you have ISO, you have a half decent color grading monitor, use it, but then have an iPad to have that back and forth dialogue with the client. Make sure that you run your final grade through the iPad Pro, then upload it for approval, because now you know exactly what they're going to be looking at. So when they tell you something specific, they are in reference mode, you are in reference mode, both of you guys are locked in. So you guys know exactly what needs to be corrected, and you can just pinpoint and fix that problem without any confusion or misunderstanding. Personally, I feel like this is the biggest game changer for the content creation industry. I mean it. For the film industry, it doesn't really matter because everybody has like $1 million bays and they have all the tech and they have everything that they need. So they're pretty much covered. They have color scientists on site, they have professional calibrators on site, everything is good. But I'm just talking about mom and pop shop and just in general, and especially on the advertising side too. Like I've been like in many different agency settings, like that are huge agencies, but they lack that proper workflow, that proper pipeline, and having a device like that that is accessible anywhere and everywhere, and just by one click, you get that color accuracy that you would expect from a $30,000 monitor is absolutely, literally a game changer. And this leads me to my final point. Let's build out our perfect iPad Pro. So let's go here, because the thing is, I want to build you an iPad that will give you the best bang for your buck. Okay, so let's go to store, and obviously we want an iPad Pro. Go with 13-inch, because again, 11-inch is just too small of a screen, especially for any QCing, any, pick a color of your choice. Go with 256, more than enough. Do not, for whatever reason, never ever go with nano texture. I don't understand what is this new kick that every company is about. Like they're trying to promote this anti-glare technology, like screen technology. I don't understand it because it's absolutely garbage. I've seen it with my own eyes a billion times. It doesn't matter. It could be OLED and the contrast goes from 1 million to 1 to like 500 to 1. It absolutely destroys the viewing experience.
I would be very careful about ordering this particular option based on what I've seen. Like I can see here that it is definitely better at dealing with reflections than a normal display. That's awesome. But just like the desktop version, that is at the expense of a little bit of sharpness and contrast. The blacks don't look nearly as black to me, even at 0 degrees off axis. And I also have to wonder about durability because the Pro Display XDR is very picky about which microfiber cloth you use, and you can literally ruin it if you use the wrong one.
I don't understand why Samsung is so hot about it right now that their latest TV, S95D, I think by default comes in with anti-glare, sort of like a nano texture glass technology. And then Apple is doing the same thing, but you actually have to choose a 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte to even unlock the option to get a way worse screen. Don't ever go for that. It doesn't matter. Like, listen, don't be looking at your iPad when the sun is right behind you, full blast. And even if you do 2000 nits, got you covered. You don't want to, just for that one instance that might happen once every 7 months, downgrade yourself to a technology that will look horrible 99.9% of the time. So let's do standard glass. That's our only option. I'll just do Wi-Fi. No pencil, no keyboard, no trade-in. Bye. So basically you're going to end up with, of course, we need that. So we're going to end up with $1,300 for a 13-inch. Think of it literally from content creators' perspective. You're getting yourself a monitor that does more than just monitoring. If you're working with SDR stuff or DCI-P3, You're basically getting world's smallest mastering monitor. That's exactly what you're getting. That is capable of 1000 nit edge-to-edge brightness, a full coverage for P3, which is ridiculous, a reference mode that will give you delta E of 2 or less, and then it does so much more than just what a screen can do. So that's how I would sum up the new iPad Pro. I feel like this, what we covered here, is so big that it needed its own video. Now I want to know, what do you guys think? Drop a comment below, and if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you can be notified about our future content, and I will see you in the next video.